like what you would set, right? If you were on your own and you wanted to set something appropriate for hunters and jumpers, what sorts of exercises could you set? And of course, there's a million and one exercises, but something that you learn over time is things that work and don't work. And also being aware of when you set courses that you want to think about the other users of the ring too, right? So that it works for your lessons, but it also works for the people who are flatting around or the kids who are riding or that kind of thing. So there's like some safety considerations there. And then there's also things like you want to make sure that you have jumps that you can jump from both directions. You want to make sure that you have jumps where you can change direction over the jumps and that you have options of different tracks. And of course your arena size makes a huge difference.
Tell me about it.
So in your barn, for example, you're going to end up being very creative with where you put the jumps, but you're not going to be able to practice the same things we can practice like in our outdoor where you've got room to do multiple lines that connect and stuff like that. Another thing I want to talk about is exercises that you all can do if your trainer's not around. Like a lot of barns, you're not allowed to jump without your trainer, right? So what are things that you can do that are actually going to help you and be effective as training tools without jumping? So we're going to talk about some distance stuff first, and then let's talk about courses and grids. Okay, I'm hoping my pens will work. I stole them from the feed room. Okay, so distances, when we're talking about distances for course setting, there's a lot of different factors. A huge one is the type and size of ring. So even in our indoor ring versus our outdoor ring, I'm going to set slightly differently because our indoor is smaller, more narrow, and you're not going to have quite the same amount of pace kept through the turns and that kind of thing. A good rule of thumb so if we talk about outdoor horse show atmosphere, we're basing things generally on a 12-foot stride, right? So this is for horse show. This would also be for cross-country schooling. So for example, if you had a line of jumps cross-country, it's most likely based off a 12-foot stride. It's not going to be, obviously there's variation within that, and part of the course designer's challenge to you is putting variation within it. But that's your base point. So the 12-foot stride is your reference point as to whether the line is normal, short, or long. Okay? And that's based on the average horse in a big ring carrying a decent amount of pace. And for show jumping, we're talking about 350 meters per minute. So for cross country, of course, your 12-foot stride may get lengthened, depending on the exercise and the level of the horse, right? A prelim horse is going to be carrying a lot more than 350 meters per minute.
I have a question. Okay, so the 350 meters per minute, is that for like every height in show jumping, or?
Yeah.
So like even like the 2.6s up to like the ground raise?
Yeah, and what happens in show jumping is that in the 2.6 round, if you've got a simple course here, and you go like this and like that and like this and like that, whatever it is, they're giving you generous tracks. So the time allowed is still 350 meters per minute, but they're giving you a lot more space to achieve that. And then as the jumps get bigger, they're actually expecting you to achieve that on tighter tracks, even in your first round. So for example, the courses at Spruce, the time allowed every course was a factor. So you had to, in your course walk, think about, can I afford to go out to the rail there? Can I afford to go around that jump? Because the time allowed is based on very efficient tracks. But of course, in the 2.6, 2.9, 3 foot, they want the riders to be safe and using their space, so the time allowed is much more generous. Okay, so based on a 12-foot stride, so of course we're talking about cantering courses. Can you see this, Leo? Do you want to move over, or are you okay? Okay. So I'm hoping you all know your 12 times tables. Okay, so here's our 2 jumps. Your horses jumped into the line, and they're gonna jump out of the line. Okay, so if we had 2 12-foot canter strides, do you guys know what we're allowing for landing and takeoff?
6 foot on either side.
Yeah.
6 foot on either.
So 6 feet landing, 6 feet takeoff, and 12 feet in your strides. So this would mean that in a 2-stride combination, it's actually 12 times 3, right? Because your landing and your takeoff end up being another 12 feet. So that's why your normal 2-stride combination would be 36, not inches, 36 feet, right? So one way to think about your lines is that every line you do, no matter how many strides you have in it, is going to be there's an extra stride which allows for the landing and the takeoff, right? So you've got half a stride coming in and half a stride going out that create one full stride when you're walking and when you're setting your lines. So again, if you have your 2 jumps here, and you have your landing and your takeoff, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 feet. It'd be much more even than that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 12 is actually 6 times 12 because you add the half stride for landing and the half stride for takeoff. So what would your 5-stride line really be?
72.
Good. So 72 feet. Now when you ride the hunters, your lines on your course, because you don't course walk the hunters, they tell you on your sheet how many feet in the line. In the hunters also, sometimes they end up building on bigger than a 12-foot stride because they want to see your horse carrying that smooth pace and you're not really rebalancing in the same way that the jumpers do. So sometimes that 72 feet on your course sheet might be 74 feet, or might be 86, or 87, or instead of 86, that kind of thing. And then you still know they want 6 strides in that line, or sorry, they want 5 strides in that line, but instead of it being based on a 12-foot stride, it might be a 12.5-foot stride. Same thing in the jumper medals. When you walk the jumper medals, sometimes the lines are based more on a 12.5-foot stride. So you'll walk your line and say, oh, this is a little bit long, the next one's a little bit long, and it's actually that they just want to see that flow and that pace that you use in the hunters as well. Okay, so there's different ways to walk your lines, and we're going to do that on foot and actually do it live, okay? But this is a big thing. And then remember too, that if you have jumps and you have set poles down, right? That your horses, you're jumping this jump, and then you're doing 2 strides, and then you're jumping the pole, and then you're doing 2 strides, and then you're doing 2 strides, and then you're jumping the pole. So let's say now I take away these two poles come out, and I'm thinking, okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, that's a 6-stride line. When you take these out, it's actually an 8-stride line, right? Because you've been kind of thinking of the poles as jumps, but really they're just one of your strides on the route to your jump. Hi, thank you.
No problem.
You're amazing.
No problem.
Okay. I'm going to do a really quick recap for you because we're just kind of getting started. This is Leora, everyone. And she just did an amazing errand for me, so thank you.
That's a big deal.
Okay, so we're just talking about distances. that what you set from jump to jump is going to depend what kind of ring you're in.
Okay.
So the smaller the ring, the tighter your distances will be because your horse doesn't carry the same length of stride. Even in this ring versus that ring, your horse is going to tend to canter bigger out there than he would in here. So that influences your course design. The normal course design is based on a 12-foot stride, being the average stride of an average horse out in a show kind of environment, which is usually a big ring, right? So a 12-foot stride is like a horse show or a cross-country schooling kind of stride. If you're in an indoor horse show, again, they'll adjust that accordingly to snug up those lines a little bit. The average show jumping pace that they're looking for is 350 meters per minute. And we were talking about on cross country that the stride is going to get bigger than 12 feet as well for the horses at the upper levels who are galloping and carrying a lot more pace. Then we talked about, again, based on the 12-foot stride, that when you're like at a horse show walking your lines, you're walking for the 12-foot stride in between your two jumps, but you're also allowing landing and takeoff. So you're allowing an extra 6 feet to land you into the line, and an extra 6 feet to jump you out of the line. So in a two-stride line, it's actually 3 times 12 because you have the half stride coming in and the half stride coming out. So that mixes up people when you first walk your lines, that you walk and you say, okay, well, I've got 3 12-foot strides in here, but you have to remember -1 because of your landing and your takeoff. We're also talking about in the hunters that sometimes they lengthen those lines out as well because they want to see the hunters cover the ground and have that big relaxed pace. So another thing to remember, especially for Laura and I who teach lessons, is when you have these poles down and then let's say you've got jump, jump and poles in the middle, your rider is going to be thinking that they're doing, in this exercise, 6 strides because they've got 2 strides between each element. So okay, 2 strides, 4 strides, 6 strides, but if you take those poles away, the stride over the pole is just there, right? So then that becomes 8 strides instead of 6. Okay. Yeah, and then we're gonna do this again hands-on outside, but another thing to think about is like when you have a bending line, you're gonna have one set of strides if you go middle to middle. You're gonna have a different set if you bend your track out and make it square. And you're gonna have a different set if you come inside and go direct, right? So let's say this might be 7 strides in the middle, 6 strides on the inside, and 8 strides on the outside. And we'll talk about that when we're at a horse show about strategy. And that's again sometimes where your time allowed comes into it. Or in your jump off, maybe you did 8 strides in your first round and your jump off, you're like, okay, I'm gonna shave that off and do 7.
Some of the top riders you'll count their strides as a whole course too. And the ones that may always have less strides, right?
Yeah.
Like not time, they're not going faster, they just have less strides.
Yeah, we worked on that last lesson, right? With your jump off. And not wasting track where you don't need it. But the awareness of your track is huge, and of course your coach will talk to you guys about this always, but if you jump in crooked to this line, you're gonna have a completely different number of strides than if you jump in straight. And how much bend you put in your lines is gonna affect that as well. So again, part of what happens when we course lock is we make a course plan. So you have, okay, plan A is I'm gonna go middle to middle in 7 strides. So you would have a middle route, an outside route, and an inside route. Plan A, if you're riding a middle route on something like this, you should pretty much be able to stick to that plan all the time, right? But we talked about something that a horse shows something unexpected happens, like your horse spooks at something, and then maybe that becomes 8 strides just because she's veered off the track, right? So having a plan, but then the ability to feel what's happening and respond to what's happening. You can change your plan, you just have to support it, right? Okay, safety stuff. We have a vertical here, side view of our vertical. What do we need to have on the ground to jump at both directions? Ground pull.
Ground pull on both sides or one in the middle diagonal.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a ground pull on either side of your vertical, you can now jump this jump either way. And the other way that you see coaches like me do it, especially if we're short on pulls, is you will have you'll have one pull, but you'll kind of put it on an angle so that it goes to both sides of the jump. So it starts on this corner and goes across to the other corner, and just enough that the horse can see, because horses don't have the best depth perception, right? Now that is not a very, it's still safe and fair, but it's not the most fair thing to do to a young horse, right? On a young horse, you would really want to give them a ground line that's straight, that's away from the front rail of the jump, so that if you've got your front rail here, you've got, 8 to 12 inches out, and then the ground line. On a young horse who gets themselves too close to the jump, you can even pull that ground line closer towards the takeoff to encourage them to take off earlier, right? If they tend to get under the jump and knock the rail down. But again, for safety, you want to have on the side of the jump you're jumping that you have something on the ground. For horses that are more experienced, some people take the ground rails away to actually make the horse have to be more responsible for their height. Because what the ground rail does is it gives the horse that baseline that helps them figure out how tall the jump is. When you take that away, it's harder for them to gauge. You'll see at horse shows they almost never have rails on the ground. The ground lines are always up a bit. Okay, jumping an oxer. You've got one rail higher than the other. Which way would you jump this jump?
Yes, one first.
Yeah. So you'd always jump the oxer ascending with the higher rail at the back. You can also jump oxers that are absolutely square, right, where they're level. And again, if you're jumping this oxer this way, you need to have a ground line down just ahead of that front rail. Okay. Another thing you wouldn't want to do is have an oxer with a box at the back, and you're jumping this oxer this way. That box should always be at the front of the oxer. Or if you have an oxer that you're jumping both ways, you can have boxes under both rails and a ground line on both sides. Okay? But you don't want to put visually distracting material at the back of your oxer or on the off side of your vertical, right? You would always have it right under the vertical or pulled a little bit forward or pulled to the front of that oxer. Okay. Any questions about types of jumps or safety stuff from there?
Liverpools.
Liverpools. You'll see Liverpools set different ways. At Spruce they had it set, so we had a vertical like this, and then they had the Liverpool like that. So the Liverpool was actually pushed past. So that was one of the course designer's questions, right? That's sort of a more advanced exercise than having the Liverpool with the pole squarely in the middle. My drawings are getting worse. Okay. I wanted to talk about types of grids. So So again, talking about courses, we talk about basing things on a 12-foot stride, but at home, we don't always jump on a 12-foot stride. And in fact, we practice often not on a 12-foot stride. And also we want to have the option to trot in. So when you've got a cross rail, okay, let's do aerial view here. So you've got your cross rail, and you have a beginner rider. You're going to have a placing pole in front for them to trot in. You might have more than one trot pole, although that can be harder, especially if the horse doesn't have the best rhythm. A great way to do that, if you're going to do that, is to start with a series of trot poles and then build the oxer at the back so the horse already has the sense of it, right? But a cross rail with a placing pole, especially for a beginner horse or rider, let's say beginner rider, what would the distance we want to be in here? So 9 feet is a good starting point.
Once you do 8 if you have a little horse.
Yeah. I almost never do 9 for a trot in. So I would say we usually want to do 7 to 8 feet. And for let's say a horse like Austin, who's not super tall, or a horse who's a school horse who doesn't have the biggest stride, you're definitely going to want to stick to 7 feet. Because you want to encourage the horse, the takeoff spot is basically right between the pole and the jump, and you want them not to feel that they have to jump long over the cross rail. Now on a young horse, you start with 9 feet, and as they get experience, you can start to push that pole into 7 feet. Judy, who helped me with my level 1, was my mentor for my level 1. She pretty much always uses a 7-foot rail because she wants those horses to get to the base and jump up. Now, if you're doing your coaching exam, 9 feet is probably the right answer. So trotting in, now thinking about a grid. So here's some numbers to think about. If you've got, this is your first jump, you've got your trot rail, let's say we've got an 8-foot trot rail, you've got a bounce, trotting in to a bounce, the typical distance is 9 feet. Then if you were going to do a 1 stride after that, typically you would do 18, maybe 19, and then 21. So this is 1 stride and 1 stride. The reason that your second 1 stride gets longer is because now you have some momentum of cantering this stride and cantering in. So as well, if you were to trot in and do a 1 stride, you would do 18 feet, right, our shorter number, trotting in. And then again, if you were to do another 1 stride, maybe you've got an oxer there, you would do 21 feet. 21 feet is a wonderful number for 1 strides in general in indoors. Like if you have 2 verticals, 21 feet is usually a perfect practice exercise to jump in, do a regular stride for an indoor ring, and jump out well. With an oxer, I would probably do 22. Okay, but these are really the numbers I want you guys to keep in mind. Trot in, bounce 9 feet, 1 stride 18, 1 stride 21. Now if we're doing canter, let's go back to this grid. So let's just skip our placing pole for now, although you could have a 9-foot placing pole to canter in quietly. So our first bounce now is going to be 10 to 11 feet. Canter and bounces. So trot and bounces are usually 9 feet. Works for almost every horse. Canter in is 10 to 12 feet, depending on your horse and depending on the height of the jump, right? And we don't usually jump bounces bigger than about 3 feet. Okay, so canter in, we've got our 10 to 11 foot bounce. Now already that first stride we probably want to have a little bit bigger distance in here. So we're probably looking at 19 to 21 feet. And again, if you had another one coming out now, it would be the same because you've cantered in, you're keeping that same momentum. So if, for example, we did this grid, this is one that Brian told me about years ago that I can't remember who he got it from. It might be from Mark. This would be a grid to help a horse learn to be careful and thoughtful and take their time and compress their stride. So that would be 11 to 19 to 19 to 11, all verticals. So the challenge is here, you've got a bounce coming in, you've got a tight one stride of canter, you've got a tight one stride of canter, and then you've got a bounce coming out. And again, with grids, we don't want the horses to be gaining momentum through the grid, right? If they're trotting in and cantering out, you get that little gain of momentum. But if the whole thing is cantering in, you shouldn't be exiting the grid any faster than you came in, which some horses have trouble with. So having this, for a cantering grid, having the same exercise at the end that you had at the beginning is a really good test for horse and rider to make sure that you're not getting that snowball rolling down the hill faster and faster feeling.
So the end and jump like an ox or something.
Yeah. Grids can be used to give riders confidence too, right? You'll see grids that we build up and you get the bigger jump at the end, you build up and you get the bigger jump at the end. Those grids are either A, to help the rider get confidence, or B, to help the horse get confidence over a bigger jump before they're used to jumping it by themselves. They can give riders a little bit of a false sense of ability. So you do have to be careful with that. The tougher grids and the more advanced grids would be things like this, where you have responsibility at the end instead of excitement at the end. So another example would be something like where you've got a jump. So we've got our oxer here. You've got, let's say, 39 feet is going to be 3 strides in here. And this again is an indoor ring, quiet exercise. 3 strides out, 39 feet. So now this 39 feet is another good one to remember for 3 strides, because you can put a pole to almost anything. And I've found that 37 to 39 feet, depending on your horse. Again, you've got one a little bit shorter strided or your indoor is tight. But this is a good exercise to teach riders about stride control, right? No matter what happens here, they have to do 3 strides before they jump out. So it teaches them like, oh, okay, my horse landed right after the pole, suddenly that 3 strides is forward. Or my horse was right here, jumped in big, and now suddenly I've got to wait for those 3 strides to fit in.
But I guess wouldn't it be more difficult, like if you had to add or take away a stride, right? That's why it's a 3 stride. That makes sense, what I just said.
Say it again.
So like, if you landed like really tight, like there's probably, yeah, you could do it, but it would be really hard to get like the 4 strides.
Yeah, well, and that's why the 3 stride is kind of that perfect number, because the less you go, the more difficult it is, right? If you screw up your pole and you've got 1 stride to the jump, it's really intimidating. But when you've got 3 strides to do something about it, it's kind of that comfort zone for horse and rider where you can still make an adjustment. And in terms of developing riders' eyes, we want to do lots of lines, lots of related distances, right? And again, if you have not only the responsibility on this side of the jump, but you have to then come back and do 3 strides to a pole or a cavaletti coming out, then again, that's asking a lot from the rider, and those are the skills you're going to need in the jumper ring. I found that one of my toughest courses in this last horse show that I was just at was the line down the hill, and we had the forward 5 strides, we had a double of verticals, and then we had a waiting 6 strides. And again, down the hill, so it walks 3 feet short, but you're going down a hill, so it's not 3 feet short. It's probably 7 or 8 feet short because you've got all that momentum of the horse going down the hill, right? So that was basically, this exercise is how you would practice something like that, because landing off this jump, it's going to be tougher to fit those 3 strides in, right? It's that land and balance moment. Okay. This is the grid I want you guys to memorize. 9-foot bounce, 18-foot one stride, 21-foot one stride. For your rider testing, that is the grid they want to see all the time. Okay? And, you know, for coaching exams and stuff like that, this is a very favorite grid. And it's something that almost any horse can do. And with the bounce, you really get to see rider position and balance and timing, right? If you were taking this grid and then making it more challenging for yourself, you could do something like add a bounce at the end. And then again, because we're now got the cantering momentum, you'd probably want this to be 11 feet, right? 11 to 12 feet. When you've got the bounce at the beginning, it can be a little bit quieter. Okay, I think we could probably go outside. One thing I wanted to talk about ring use before we go outside. Okay, so things that don't work very well in course setting is having your jumps on the wall, right? So at a horse show, like if we're using our indoor ring, we're at a horse show, we're gonna put all those jumps on the wall, right? You're maximizing your space, and it's more true to a horse show, bigger ring feeling. For schooling, it's not sensible to do, because then all of a sudden your riders are having to weave around the jumps on the wall. It's really hard to have good passing rules and safety. And then for your tractor, it's not able to harrow the rail, which is one of the most used tracks. And especially if you're jumping up and down the rails with your jumps, and then your tractor's not able to harrow that area easily. So most, when you're setting a course, you need to know how much room your tractor needs. So for example, for us here, we need 10 feet. So I would just stride that out off the wall and make sure that my standard does not get closer than 10 feet to the wall. I would say in my experience that 10 feet is not enough for ponies and horses and jumpers and kids to pass each other safely. So I would definitely make that at least 12 feet so that you can have your 2 lanes. And then you also want to think about things like, do you have 2 diagonal jumps, right? Diagonals are just simple, but sometimes you can build a really complex course that looks awesome, then you realize you only have 1 diagonal, and it actually makes it really hard to develop courses that you can make a complete course out of. So just as simple a thing as having 2 diagonals. Now here, if we've got our jump line here, we've got this option, we've got that option, we've got that option, that option, that. Depending on how you stride these, you might be able to go on an arc, right? Again, depending on your striding, you may have options like this. So you want to really be conscious of not just plonking jumps in the ring, but how many different ways can you make those jumps relate to each other. And then thinking about your empty space too. It's much more difficult, and again, being conscious of your ring size, it's much more difficult for other riders to ride around you if your jumps are backing on to one another, right? If they're not sure if you're going to the quarter line or going to the diagonal and those standards are right up against each other, it's really hard for them to make an escape, right? They were planning on coming across the diagonal or something, and then they're, oh, she's going there and I can't go, and it gets really hard. Where in a ring like this, where you've got your jumps spread away from each other, there's more routes for other people to A, keep riding when you're jumping, and B, kind of have an escape route if they get mixed up about where you're going or you don't communicate where you're going. Okay, star exercise is something that we're going to talk about for outside, because this is going to be the base of our course that we're going to set today. And you'll see when we get out there, we have some of the elements out there already. The star exercise is just a simple way to have a lot of options if you do it right. So you're going to have a line up the center and 2 diagonal lines. Okay? Well, that seems pretty simple. If you set it properly, you should be able to have multiple bending options, right? Just something as simple as being able to go like that and then back to where you were can be a really simple warm-up exercise. But then you should also have all of these options from your diagonals back to your center jumps. And then again, like we've been jumping outside, you have your options of curving your 2 diagonals relating together as well, right? So thinking of options, here we've got a simple exercise where all your jumps are spread out and you've got multiple ways to use the different lines. So that's going to be our base for today. The tricky thing is having everything relate to each other so that you can actually have multiple options and not like, oh, well, I could go there, but it's 3.5 strides, or I could go there, but it's 5.5 strides, right? You don't want to set things that are not fair to jump. What we're going to do today is do a little grid. So we've got a grid up the center line. We might do a combination coming out, and then we're going to do our basic diagonal lines. And then you've got, again, those options of like, okay, I'm going to go from this one off the right rein into my 1 stride, or I'm going this one on the left bend to the 1 stride. Okay. The downside with building a grid in is, especially if it's trotting in, is you can only do the grid one way. So that does limit you. Another way to do this would be to do something like a series of canter bounces that you could jump any of these jumps and finish cantering out of your bounces. Again, that's a more advanced exercise, so you need to be aware of what horses and riders you're setting your course for. But usually most barns have the rule of the course kind of stays where it is, like we do like once a week we change our course here. So the course kind of stays where it is, but the trainers can move the grid around because you've got ponies doing it and advanced horses and beginner horses. So you want to be able to change those distances accordingly. Okay, any questions before we go outside?
Can you just go over exercises to do when your trainers are around?
Yeah.
We're gonna do that here or out there?
Maybe we'll do it outside. It might be more memorable if we're walking it. Yeah, let's do that first outside. Okay. Let's do it. Be prepared to get roasted.
I have sunscreen if you want.
Thank you.
Okay.
So as all of you guys know, I'm a huge fan of canter poles. And I didn't used to be a huge fan of canter poles because I thought they were impossibly difficult, because I had jumped and competed 3'6" without ever really doing canter poles. And I guess I was relying a lot on instincts and my flat work being strong to jump around these courses. Then I went to a jumper barn and was asked to canter poles on the ground, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't see a distance, I didn't know how to adjust my distance, and now that I've chipped away at that and worked at that for many years and it's comfortable for me to do, I really see the benefit in what it can teach you and what it can teach your horse. So again, there's some things that are for the rider, some things that are for the horse. Depending on your horse's issue, the exercise you choose might be quite different. I want to show you a simple thing here. Now, before we get started, we're gonna, everyone grab yourself a pole, throw it on the ground. 4 to 5 feet. If you had a dressage horse that you wanted to really get extension out of, you could even go 5.5 feet. 4 to 5 is kind of your normal. So if I was setting trot poles for the average person, I would take one step, 3 feet, and then leave a gap. And then I would take another step and then leave a gap. So those are basically 4 feet, right?
Can you also like make them like bigger to like slowly build them bigger and bigger so like they're even bigger than 5.5 feet? Or
Depends on your horse. Okay. Yeah. I don't know that I've seen anyone be successful much beyond that. And you don't want to go past the point at which they can be successful. But certainly this is like, I would say anyone could do these, right? This is very average. Austin could do it. Your horse could do it. And then for a big horse like Laura's, this would be very conservative for him, right? She would trot in slowly here.
I have a 15-hand horse too, so
right.
I could do this with her.
Right, yeah, for sure. But with Tommy, you'd probably want to be setting a little bit bigger. And then as soon as you set them, you always just walk your way back through and just make sure that you've got them even. Because it really does mix up your horse if they're all over the place.
Yeah, everybody else has
now, on a pony like Harley, the trot poles are like that because he's so little. And as soon as you make that trot pole just a little bit bigger and you've got more than 2 of them, he starts to falter and he can't figure it out. So you do start to watch your school horses too to see what they're comfortable doing. Okay, so we've got our series of bounces. Now, if we look at these, can we jump them both ways?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got ground lines on both sides. We've got the even distance, right? If this was 10 feet here and 12 feet there, it would be okay going this way and it would get ugly coming this way, right? It's not fair to ask your horse to go from a big stride to a tiny stride in a bounce. Right?
Yeah.
If you were setting it to teach your horse to be quiet coming in and you wanted to do that 10 feet to 12 feet, you could, but you would have to be able to ride well enough to keep your canter very quiet coming in.
Just as far as the ground lines, I always see you setting them like right there, like on the edges.
Yep.
But like, I mean, that's okay, right? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I would say this is kind of normal.
Yeah.
This is more inviting than close. If you watch, I don't want to give away too many secrets here. If you watch some jumper trainers, their ground lines are like this, right? So they're still there, but what they're saying to the horse is, yeah, you can get right here and jump, right? Because for the jumpers, you want to train them to get to the base and jump up and around.
Especially
in a hunter, you want to give them some ground line because you want them to jump out of that gap. In a horse that gets too close and knocks the jump down, you might even do this, right? Like, hello, give yourself some room, okay?
But
Yeah.
for most shows, you would find it close together.
Yeah, most shows you don't, in the jumpers, you don't really get ground lines. They have the
There's
poles
nothing on
just
the ground.
above.
Okay.
But for schooling purposes, it's kinder to have
Hunters
them.
always have ground lines.
Hunters always do, and hunters, the jumps are always built forward, right? So you'd have like back rail, gate, box, pole, so that everything is kind of at the front of the jump to encourage the horses to jump like from far enough back and show their roundness over.
It's all about like showmanship, kind of, when it comes to hunter.
Yeah, it's judged on the horse's style. So the way they build the jumps is actually to help show off the horse's style with theoretically limited help from the rider, even though the best hunter riders, of course, have to be incredible riders. because you have to look like you're doing nothing, but you have to have your horse absolutely ready to jump the jumps in perfect form. So, okay, so we've got our first part of our star. So now the tricky thing is to set a diagonal line each direction that then can relate back into this and back into that for starters. Okay? So in the star exercise, you don't want to set, you wouldn't set like a 3 stride on your diagonal because it's going to get too tight to connect back into things. You would rather have a 5 or a 6 stride or possibly a 4 stride. It depends on the dimensions of your ring. So let's say we start with a new jump. Here. Okay, so again, we're thinking about the angles too to have it so that it's very jumpable and relatable to other things. So, Leo, why don't I have you walk this line? So we're going for 3 feet short of a normal 5 stride.
3 feet short.
Yeah.
Oops.
Okay, not quite. So you start. No, that's okay. So, okay, 3, 6, 9, 1 stride, 2 strides, 3 strides, 4 strides, 5 strides, and then 9 more feet. Yeah, so you had about 9 feet left over there, huh, Leo? Okay. 5.
And then we add an extra 9, right, Leora?
Yep.
Because we want 5 strides plus the 9.
Yeah.
Okay. And the 9 again is for the takeoff and the landing parts?
Yeah, and at a horse show, you'd be giving yourself 12 feet there.
So instead of the 9, we give ourselves an extra 12. So an extra stride, essentially.
So you give yourself an extra 3 feet. So instead of 9, you give yourself 12.
Okay.
And what that really means, it's not that your landing and takeoff are so different. It's just that your stride is not quite going to be 12 feet in these rings.
Yeah.
So if you give yourself 3 feet less in that way, then it's just sort of saying, okay, my stride is actually 11 and a half feet instead of 12.
Okay.
But that 3 feet short rule is just a simple rule that seems to work in almost every line. And it's easier than calculating 11 and a half feet times 5, right? Okay, let's build an oxer here. Leo, can you grab those 2 white standards over there, and we'll use these white standards here. Just in front of you there. Yeah. Just going to make this an oxer here. So we're going to use all white standards. So we're trying to match.
Oh,
The matching, we're always going to end up with something that doesn't match in here, but we're trying. Okay, and then Patty, that could be a ground line.
the boxes. Oh, yeah.
And then ground line, and then we'd have a pole up here, or we'd use it as a vertical sort of thing.
Yeah, we'll just bring this straight across.
So an oxer doesn't necessarily mean like an X, it means two.
Yeah, oxer basically just means width.
Okay.
So a vertical is always just
One.
one. The oxers can be different styles. Like if we made it like this, and then did that one down on the slope, then it's called a Swedish oxer, because you have the different heights. If we do it so that it's just straight across, and that one's straight across the same height, then we'd call it a square oxer.
Okay.
And then if that back rail goes up, we would call it a ramped or an ascending oxer. So in the hunters, all the oxers are ramped.
Oh, ramp.
Do you ever see descending oxers, or is that just too dangerous?
It's illegal. It's considered to be too dangerous. So like if you did it at a horse show, you would be penalized. You would be fined and eliminated or whatever you decide to do. And then for schooling, it's just not a good idea. So what happens is if we were to jump our oxer this way, the horse can't see the back rail, right, until they're kind of there. So if they're expecting it to be a vertical, basically, especially it's wide enough now you can kind of see the back rail, but if it was a little bit closer together, this rail would hide that one. So if they're not expecting the back rail, then they're more likely to land on it.
What about if the oxer's like square but it's really big? Is that like, because it's then the horse still can't see the back rail? Is that?
Yeah, I mean square is tough for them, but it's, I guess when they get close enough they can see it. I don't know. The back rail, if it's down, it just is out of their vision for too long. Okay, so again, we can only jump this way for now. Another thing to mention here is you don't want your poles ever to be right against. So even if it was just like that, if the horse knocks it, it's got room to roll. If you've got both sides squished in, again, it's the same problem we talked about with the cross rail, where if the horse hits it, either the whole thing's coming down or your horse is coming down. Okay, good.
And that one's screwed up because the metal part over on the left side wouldn't hold the pole, and the pole's being held up by the post.
Oh yes. Yes, we need to find a jump cut for that one.
The
Yeah.
pole isn't touching the sand though.
Yeah,
It's
right
being held up, yeah. Yeah, well, we've got more jump
If we
cups
put
over
it
there.
up, that would work. It's just because the metal part was
Yeah,
too
it's
close.
the metal cup part that's not really holding it, is what I'm saying.
Right. Okay.
We made it a bit bigger.
So let's add our other diagonal line, and then what we're going to do is walk and see if our options work or not, right? Sometimes you set a course and then you have to change it because the options don't pan out. So again, we have a diagonal line here already, but we don't want to do the exact same line because we want to be able to harrow the ring differently and use different footing. Another thing we could change is the angle of this line, and I'm just thinking because we only have one colorful jump out here, we should probably move this. So Leo, maybe if you grab this pink rail and take it close to the brown one down there, and what we're going to do is start our line See, it's nice if you can jump that oxer to this one on a half circle too if you wanted to.
So wouldn't you move it over this way more? Sort of
Yeah,
thing?
so I think we're basically going to keep it where it is, but we'll just change the angle a fraction. And of course we're going to change the distance. So right now this was set as a 5-stride line, so I'm going to try to make it a 6-stride line. So 3, 6, 9, 1. 3, 4, 5. Was that 5 or 6? I messed myself up saying it out loud. Okay, try it here. Okay. Good. Okay, so we're gonna, that one is barely moving, but we're gonna make it into a vertical. And then actually, yeah, why don't we use a pink one there and a pink one here? That's perfect. So we're just gonna pull our standards a little bit this way so that they're matching this pole. Actually, maybe leave that one. It's precarious. See the standard? Just a vertical, and it can have that purple bench under it. Okay, so those are gonna move, but we don't know where they're moving to yet.
They're taken out because they're replacing the footing.
Oh, so it's hiding them for now?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, our indoor is shut down for 2 weeks.
Wow. But at least it's nice weather.
Yeah.
Can you like trailer way back one time?
Yeah,
Jump in here?
definitely.
Because that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And then
Okay, so we have our 6 stride line. Let's get all of you to walk that and see if you agree that that is 6 strides with 3 feet short.
What was it supposed to be? 6 stride line?
Yeah. Good. No? Did you eat it up? Did you get there too quickly or not quickly enough?
No, I had an extra 3 feet at the end.
Okay.
Well,
I'm-
I had the 12.
Okay.
I made 12.
I'm gonna walk again to make sure. Now, Leora, you want to get in the habit of walking looking up because you want to actually be looking at your jump that you're going to jump,
Okay.
right? If you're course walking, it's sort of that that visualization of you've already seen this once before, right? So you want to look up, and actually what I do when I'm walking is also to think about the feeling that I'm going to have when I get to the jump. Okay, like my legs are on, my eyes are up, here's my release. And you can actually put that into your body of having that right feeling already.
I feel like I'm gonna fall down.
Just did a lot.
Well, I tell you the numbers, so I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
It's hard to get a sense for it. You're not doing a lot. It's like the giant person steps. With easy.
Now, can anyone tell me why this line off that way is going to be difficult?
Oh, which
Because of
way
the
side?
angle.
Coming this way?
There's a really short approach.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really short approach.
You need to go a bit, and then coming this way, you're gonna have to wait because it's an officer.
Well, no, it's a vertical this way.
Coming the other way, I mean. Like when you, that is a vertical. I like.
I was like, where's the oxygen? Coming this way, your horse is really going to want to cheat that turn,
Yeah.
right? There's not a lot of room to get out to the wall, and your horse is probably just going to want to dive left. So that's, or go out the gate. So that can be a challenge there, but getting a good distance in is more challenging off that short approach, right? You're up against the wall, you don't have a lot of time to get straight. I still think it's doable, but I wouldn't want all of my lines to be like that, right? One challenge like that on your course is fine, but you don't want your horse and you to feel like, oh, every turn is so difficult.
With 6 strides, you get a lot of time though.
There's not much room to like
Yeah,
change your line.
Exactly.
The only thing you can do is like shorten or lengthen.
exactly, yeah. Okay, so we have a lot of jumps in the ring that aren't part of our course. We're gonna try to ignore those for now. What we're gonna do is walk our bending lines, see if they're workable. And then what we're gonna do is think of some strategic placement of the rest of the jumps that can integrate into this star-shaped course. Okay, so let's walk from here to the crossrail and see what that walks. So middle to middle, you wanna walk what a normal track would be. Okay, so I got 6 feet short. You got 9 feet short.
4 and 6. So 4 with extra 6. No, 4 plus 3. So you have 4 strides plus 3 feet.
Okay, I thought you got 5 strides plus 1 more.
Yeah, I think
I was watching you walk. That's what I saw you walk.
I think I might have taken 2 landing strides, like and.
Oh. Okay. So let me walk this again. I'll just count it as I do it. So again, I'm looking up. I'm looking middle to middle. One, two, three, 1. 1, 2, 3, 2. 3, 4, 5, and 6 feet left. Okay? So that's a doable 5 stride, right? It's not a perfect distance. It's not set to be perfect. It's set to be short. However, you do have the bend in the line. So your coach can say to you, this is a little tight in 5, so just push your line out a fraction, right? Making up 3 extra feet from there to here is very, very doable. Right? Okay, so I think we're happy to leave that one. So now let's walk from here to our vertical.
watched you and I counted you, I thought I counted you 6 strides. No extras.
Yeah, I was pretty much right there. I was like 9 feet short, but I walked a track that was a bit overly square. Like I kind of got mixed up with where the tape was on the jump because it's off center. So I think it actually probably works out better than I walked. So did you all get 6 strides? I can't remember what I got.
6 and 6.
Okay. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a little bit. Okay, so again, we've got a lot of space in here. What we could do if we wanted to make this perfect is push this jump back, but we'd have to push it back a whole stride to make this line still work. And then again, we're right up against the wall. So I would rather be able to tell my riders it's a little quiet in 6, or stay a little bit inside and do 5, right?
Are we doing 9 feet for the landing and takeoff right now?
Yes, we are doing the 3 feet short rule. Yeah, because you wouldn't want to have 12 feet in this kind of ring. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't talk about the size of the jumps affecting distance, but of course it does. If you were doing 2 cross rails here, you know, the 6 would be great. You might even do 7, Where if they got 3'6", then the 6 is going to start to feel really tight, and you're going to have to use your track in a smart way to do the 6 nicely. Okay, now for sure we're going to have a rideable track from here to the pink, right? You can see how you have, you've got so much variability from here to there, right? So this would be a line that probably you would ride off your eye and not have a set number in mind. And then if we look from our oxer back to our pink jump, that's a tighter track, and we might want to walk that one. And then what else do we need to, we need to walk from that pink to the crosser, or did we do that one? Which one are we missing? Oh, the ones into the grid, right? Now interestingly, so that walk's overly tight in 4, but it's a really curved track. And in a really curved track, it's gonna take some of your horse's momentum away. So I think that's still like you would walk that and say, oh, it's really short in 4. But if you rode it, it wouldn't feel short at all, right? Like think about when you go onto a tight canter circle, right? Right away your horse shortens and slows down. The same thing's gonna happen on this curve. Okay, so now we're gonna walk from here to the oxer and from here to the pink. So Leora and Patty, why don't you guys walk to the pink? And you remember you wanna walk from the pole, not the ground line.
From the pole, not the ground line.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Because this is where the height of your horse, this is where the apex of your horse's jump will be.
So if there's not a ground line, it would be here anyways?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I've been screwing up.
That's okay, I forgot to tell you that. This is how we learn.
I don't remember any of
error.
this stuff anymore.
With longer lines, it's so much easier to like add things.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
You've
I
got
guess-
more options. But you still want to know that it's a fairly normal, right?
Okay.
Okay. And then walk this one.
Are you doing the show system video?
That's a bit ugly, right? In 4. That's my least favorite one so far. Especially because you don't want to be long into your bounces. What I might tend to do if this was, I was teaching my lesson here and I wanted them to do that line, is I would take the white rail down, make it a vertical on that side, and then do 4. Or sorry, then do 5 rather than the long 4. Okay, so we've walked from the oxer to our bounces, and it walks as like a horse show on stride 4. Now that's not very realistic in this ring, especially when you're going into a careful exercise with the bounces. So you kind of have 2 options, and it would depend on the level of your horse and rider. You could say, I want you to add and do 5. It's a 4-stride line, but you're gonna add and do 5, right? Connor could do that, no problem. Ray could do that, no problem. If you felt like you didn't quite have that degree of adjustability, you could take this rail down, take away this barrel, move this ground line in so that you just have the vertical here. Then you're jumping into a vertical without this width to account for. And then instead of a forward 4, it's going to end up being a nice 5-stride. So these are things that you would account for. These are things your coach would account for. right, to set you up for success. This isn't the kind of exercise you're going to encounter at the horse show. Again, in order for us to move this, it's going to make things difficult in our line. So I think we're going to leave it. The other option is we leave the oxer, we take out the first one of the bounces.
And you get an extra stride.
3, 6, 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9 feet. So that could work quite well as well. And that way it's a little bit simpler. You've just got one bounce to account for, and you've got a more normal 5 into the one, or into the bounce rather. Okay, what did we get from this one to the pink?
7 and 6.
Okay. So, okay, did everyone get that?
I got 7. It was probably because I took a different track.
Yeah. Okay, and there's a lot of variability in your track, right? So if we go middle to middle, let's see what I get to.
I find that a really long 6.
Yeah.
I got a 6 and 6.
Yeah.
Got 6 and 6.
Yeah, I walked it as a forward 6 as well. I think you walked a little outside of where I walked. So again, this would be a place coming off the bounces where I would tell my riders to do 7, right? If we had an oxer where the last bounce was, you could easily do the 6, right? Especially like 3 foot, 3, 3, whatever. So again, this is where your coach at the show is going to help you guys to make these sorts of plans. Like, okay, and it might be different. Okay, for your horse, we're going to do 7, and for your horse, we're going to do 6 with a little opening inside rein. Make sure you get up the line. At Spruce, it was interesting because Brian was usually course walking with me and Nicole. And Nicole had 2 different horses in the same class that I did, and then my horse. And Brian would tell the 2 of us 3 different plans, right? So I'd say to me, okay, you're going to do 8 in that line and then 6 over there. And he'd say to Nicole, okay, I want you to do 7 and 6. And then he'd go, on your second horse, Nicole, I want you to do 8 and 6. So just knowing the differences in our horses and the differences in what was coming up with the exercises, the plan would change. Okay, so the main thing is we have a workable star exercise. All our straight lines are set pretty on stride, like very normal, 3 feet short of on stride, which is normal for a ring. And then our bending lines, we get into some finessing, with some of them being a little bit short, some of them being a bit forward. And that's where your coach is going to tell you which ride to take, or whether they want you to, for example, add instead of going on stride. Okay, so now we're going to look at the ring, we're going to find our gaps, and we're going to think about where we can set up complementary exercises. So my first thought when I look at this ring is I would love to set a line of skinnies down this quarter line, and then that's going to give us options from, like for example, from the oxer, that you could jump the skinny and then turn right and then jump the pink one. And then bend the line to the skinny. So it's going to give us other options. So when we put our skinny down there, we're going to want to walk a count from here. Okay? So that's, I think, what I'm going to start with, just to think about a good walk from here. And I'm going to walk it a little bit shorter than I would normally, because a skinny is a more accurate question and you don't want your horses flying at it. So So instead of 9 feet short, I think I probably did 7 feet short here. Sure, that'd be great. Okay, so I walked this in 7 strides from the pink. 7 strides a little bit short to account for the fact that it's a skinny. And then we're gonna do the same thing and walk to the other skinny up here. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I never thought to turn those upside down, and one of the trainers, I don't know if it was Shanae or Megan, did that the other day, and I was like, oh, it's genius!
You're supposed to go this way?
Well, because normally they're just on the ground, like, as fill, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it can be a pole. It's awesome. Okay, so we have a 7 stride straight that's set a little bit short in 7 because we've got 2 skinny jumps that are accurate. Then we have a bending 7 strides from the pink to the skinny, again set a little bit short because we want to keep our canter a little bit contained when we're jumping skinnies. And it looks like I'm just a little bit crooked from you guys there. Okay, awesome. Okay, so we still have 1, 2, 3 jumps we can use, and we also can make some things into oxers if we would like. So
If we were to make that pink one there an oxer, that would be too tight for a lot of different combinations, right?
which one? This one? It would make that 4 stride really difficult, this one, but it's still doable. And the nice thing with oxers is you can always take the rail away. You have to jump those oxers, but you have the option. But because we only have the 1 pink pole here, I think we'll leave it.
We make a line on the outside.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I'm just thinking.
Maybe make it like a 3 stride or something.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of long lines, so why don't we do that? We can make it a 1, 2, why don't we make a triple common, well, we might not be able to.
What if we put one in the, I guess we can't really put one in the middle there. It would have to be that one there.
Why don't we make a 2 stride, and then we can do a bending to something. So if we have a 2 stride here and then a bending that is in enough that you could turn left or turn right, and then you've got the option again, you could do the bending line, turn right, roll back over the pink.
Okay.
So why don't we make our first jump around here? So again, we're not getting too close to that jump, but we'll want to make these regular length poles.
So are we doing a skinny on these ones or no?
No.
So where should we get?
Well, that jump behind us, the white box, is not in our course. So even in our combination, we're going to use the 3-foot short rule. So we talked about 36 feet being a normal 2 stride. So instead, we're going to do 33. not moving this jump very much. Yeah, we can use any boxes. We want to try to make them kind of match. Maybe those two white ones could go side by side under one of them. When you set a course, you always want the jumps to be big enough that they look fun to jump. That's one of the unwritten rules.
I think that has to go up one.
Up one? Better? Okay. Yeah, unfortunately those cups don't really work with the ground line, so the ground line has to get put up on one side. Just like a little diagonal, yeah. Yeah, just on one side, and then you can pull your pole over a bit end so the other side fits in. Yeah.
So what would that say to a horse, having one side up like that?
It's a bit distracting. And what I would tend to do is have the other side the same, but the other way, so it's like a little miniature crossrail under the jump. Yeah, and with horses that are looky, like Aussie, like he might notice that gap, right, between the pole and the ground.
Question about the box.
Yeah.
Does it not really go this way?
Because why?
Boxes are on the other side.
Oh, I can't tell from here. Yeah, the boxes should be right under the pole, and then we want a ground line on the other side as well.
You want to put that brown one on?
Does that matter then, Leora? If we have poles on both sides,
Yeah.
so it won't matter if we have one up on one side and one up on the other?
No, that's okay. I usually just do them like a little cross rail so that you put one up on the other side opposite.
So then it does matter if the horse is going to jump this or not. And it's got both poles on both sides.
Not really, I just like symmetry. So I would lift that side up. I don't know, what time is it?
It's not gonna work. 3:46. What's happening?
We were gonna try to be finished around 4. It's 1:45 right now. But
Let's just close this.
Shane, but Pepper can still come in the ring and everything.
Yeah, but free on Fridays.
Oh, okay. I guess you need to get on Pepper so that you can get on Blaze. You get to be our guinea pig on this course.
Oh, is that your render up?
Yeah, this to me looks a little more symmetrical. It's very nice.
That's cool.
Okay, so what I've done now is I've walked a bending 4-stride line to that mark, and that's where we're going to put a jump that we can either jump and stay left or jump and turn right. If you stay left, you can then jump your diagonal line or any number of bending lines. If you turn right, you can roll back and jump the pink, or you can roll back and jump back through your combination. And this is, again, Laura, when you've got a ring that's limited,
I was going to say, none of this is going to work in my rig.
but this will, okay, to some degree. I mean, you probably won't be able to do a combination, but if you have a jump and an angled fence, and you can jump this one, then to that one, roll back and jump back where you were, that gives you a really good flow, and then of course you can do it the other way around too. So that's a good trick to sort of, again, give yourself options, is to have that angle fence that you can turn back to the same jump you've just jumped. Okay, so now we can just make a vertical where that mark is, and then how many stars do we have left?
These brown ones?
That one right there.
Sure, that's perfect. And then why don't we make the mirror image? We can make a jump over here. The only problem if we look at our course is we don't have a lot of oxters in this course. So I think we'll make this an oxer M, because the problem if we make the 2-stride an oxer is that we run out of space with this jump, and then we run out of space to have the 4-stride line the other way. Okay. For minis you do, for the CET the rider walks by themselves.
Because I wasn't quite sure which one you're allowed to do from the
Yeah. Yeah, no, the minis you can.
Pardon?
The minis you can. Yeah.
Is that going to be
That will be an oxer. Maybe if you grab the other brown standard there. Whatever we have. We could make it a skinny too. Yeah, I guess we used a lot of poles with that bounce line.
It's a lot of jumps out there.
Yeah.
I guess to be influenced. Getting through. Is it done? I know it's closed off now, right? July 1st?
Starting tomorrow. But all the jumps are out now.
So exciting.
Yeah.
I was going a bit earlier, but.
Let's use them at that oxer. We may have to use them instead of poles, actually. It looks like we've run out of poles with all the,
What do you mean instead of poles?
like if we just make it a skinny with the barrels
Oh, right.
standing up.
We just use those barrels too. And we have that barrel there.
Yeah.
Or not this thing.
Yeah, you could put the arch and then put a barrel on either side. That sounds good. Yeah, because you don't want it to be that wide for the average horse.
We were thinking about doing a cross rail, but Patty was saying that we need to have a ground rail.
Yeah.
But we don't have a ground rail for that cross one. So is that just because it's the starting point?
Yeah, well, we should have a ground line there as well. We're just running out of poles, but cross rail's usually not such a big deal, but to make this a cross rail, you'd need another skinny, you need another pole the same length, and I don't think we have any.
And then if we made this a cross rail without the pole at
Why don't
the
we make it
bottom.
a cross rail with this on the bottom?
Okay.
That actually would work perfect. Sorry. Okay, so this is the center, and then we'll have one pole on one side of it, one pole on the other side. Perfect. That will work. Perfect. And then let's just snug up the jump so it's not so wide. Good.
Okay. So essentially, so we should have a ground rail for that one. Yeah. But since
Well,
we don't,
now the yellow's kind of acting as a ground line, right? It gives them that sense of height. And then what we can do with our cross rail is maybe use those two little boxes, one on either side. And then actually what we can do is we can make that one an oxer. That helps because we don't have enough oxers on this course as it is right now.
How the hell are you carrying that thing?
Brah!
you're a lot stronger than you really think you
It's all that physio I did on this arm.
are. It's super arm.
Yeah. It's bionic.
Titanium.
Yeah.
It is titanium.
I wish they wouldn't give me titanium. I wasn't good
be a
enough
theme
for
song.
titanium. Stainless steel for me. All right, so now what we can do is make this a square oxer and put those boxes under it.
One in the front, one in the back.
Just like, yeah, exactly. So if you just pull it to the other side, so you want to get the feet, there you go. Oh, perfect. Perfect. And then we just want to pull the boxes kind of to the front of the pole a little bit.
It's fine. It's okay.
Maybe the owners will notice that. You need more jumps and new jumps.
Yeah. I know, it's funny. She told me no color out here, and then those pink poles came out, and I'm like, who did that? And of course, it was her daughter. She's like, shh.
She likes that one. Is this like the hunter ring then? That's
Yeah.
The idea? Yeah.
Well, we didn't have any color here at all, and then we mutinied and painted some of the jumps, but then Darlene was like, only hunter jumps in the front ring. I'm like, okay, okay. And then her daughter brought out the pink poles. Okay, our grid's a little funky.
It's challenging.
So is it straight from here? Yeah, so it's easier for us to move the oxer over a little bit. So if we move our oxer 4 or 5 inches this way. Oh, sorry, that way.
This way?
Yeah. Perfect, let's try it there.
You can put that one. Wait, want to stretch it a bit closer?
Push this out a tiny bit. Ah, that looks better. And then I think it's just the last one of the grid that's a little off. Okay, so I think this jump just needed to come that way a little bit, is that right?
Well, it seems like all the jumps are going this way now. So this one's over here, this one's a little more over here, and then this one's over here. And like,
I think this standard is throwing us off too, right? Because it's the one big standard.
yeah.
Let's see if we look from back here. I can just feel my skin crisping.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so I think if we just pull this one over a tiny bit.
Actually, no, I'm not gonna tell you this. No, don't do it. I will. Do it.
Too heavy.
Like, no.
Perfect. Good. Okay. So when we look at our crazy course, we have many options, right? You've got diagonals, 100 bending lines, and you've got some really snug bending lines where it's kind of like a half, like a crescent shape. And then you've got options of jumping and rolling back.
You can even go from the bounces to like that vertical half turn.
Absolutely. That could be something that would be in your mini medal ride off, right? Ride through your bounces, left roll back turn and jump the vertical. Absolutely. And then when you talk about jumps that are, or rings that are limited in terms of space too, right? Even just this 2-stride combination, you can come out and jump this on the angle and go out and jump that on the angle by itself. So you turn them into single jumps as well. Then you can also ride down the wall and then do the angle this way and roll back to the wall. So you've got both options to angle your fences. Okay, I think we made a great course, you guys.
Someone else is going to change it.
What's that?
Someone else is going to change it.
Well, I chose this weekend because both Megan and Sinead are at Thunderbird. So I was like,
Whoa.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, I like knowing the whole stride thing. Obviously, because then it kind of works with the 1-2-1-2 that we were doing with past
Yeah.
few lessons. So it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, like when we talk about, okay, we want 6 even strides in this line, the idea of having a landing and a takeoff is like, oh, if you jump in really big, now you've got to shorten up so you still give yourself room to jump out, right? Or if you just pop over the first one, now you've got to press those 6 strides a little bit forward so that you can jump out at a good spot. So it's that idea of, you know, what happens here affects what happens there. And I know when I was a more novice coach and I would do course setting, I would have all these really cool looking jumps that were really well decorated, but they were kind of by themselves, right? Because I liked like the spooky jump and all of this. And Brian one time said to me, he's like, you know, you got to build more lines. It's like your riders are going to learn a lot more from jumping back and forth over a boring 5-stride line than they're going to learn from jumping one spooky jump, right? And it's so true, because when you get in the show ring, it's like the domino effect, right? It can be good or it can be bad, but what happens back there is going to affect what happens here, affects what happens there.
Yeah.
Good, you guys. I hope none of you get sunstroke. Thank you very much. Let me know if you want to pay me now or you want me just to bill.
Can I just put it on my thing for the month or whatever?
Yeah, for sure.